Hello, my name is Chef James Waters. I am owner and chef of KLEIN Harris Restaurant here in Calgary, Alberta. Today we are going to teach you how to cook a starter and a main. The starter being the seared beef skillet with ginger syrup, and the main being crispy skin sockeye salmon with crushed potatoes, seasonal veg, and a garlic wine butter sauce. You will be learning step-by-step instructions on how to cook these two dishes, and then you will get to enjoy them time and time again. All right, first we're going to start with our seared ginger beef skillet. We usually serve the ginger beef on a skillet, but for you guys at home, we're just going to reduce the syrup a little bit and then create the dish onto a plate. Unless, of course, you have a little cast iron at home, you can always throw it on the cast iron just for a little show. The dish is in homage of Calgary chefs from back in the mid-70s. They did create this dish at a restaurant called the Silver Inn. I think it was Chef George Wong who created it, and then he did a deep fried version that was called chili beef, and then we're just gonna kind of bring it a little more haute cuisine, refine it a bit just for our palates, and then do a seared beef with the same ingredients but not deep fried. So first we will be making the syrup, which takes a little bit of time just to reduce it, but it's based off of a simple syrup. So the concept of simple syrup is usually 2-to-1 sugar versus water. First we'll be starting out with our ginger. If you do not like the skin, you can always just peel with a spoon, which peels great, and then you don't lose that much of your ginger. Grating it down. The ginger is a little bit fibrous, no problem. As you run into kind of a jam of fiber, just flip your ginger and just keep grating on the fresh side. At the restaurant, we try to source all of our products from Canada as much as we can, and we're about 95% Canadian ingredients here. We'll just pull some of that off and reserve it. It's great to use your knife as a little bit of a shovel on your board, and then always cleaning as you go. Next up is the chili and the garlic, always using fresh garlic. You can buy pureed garlic out of the tube, that's okay too. Just try to avoid peeled garlic, as you don't know how fresh it will be. So a good way to peel garlic is just give it a little tap with your knife. You don't have to break it, but this will help ease off the skin a little bit and make it a little less of a nuisance to peel. So this guy will just be crushing down and giving a nice rough chop. Okay, so we have the pot with 1 cup of water. As I talked before, we're doing a hot preparation for simple syrup, so 1 part water, 2 parts sugar. So now we have the simple syrup, so we can throw in the ginger, the chili flakes. The chili flakes, we're gonna give you an amount which is manageable heat, but if you wanna pour it all in or add more heat to it, you totally can. If you have your favorite hot sauce, whatever it is. For me, I'm just kind of an English background. The hottest things we used to eat at home were horseradish. So I don't put too much heat into our ginger syrup, but of course, welcome to make it as hot as you want. We are going to add a little bit of seasoning, salt and pepper, and then transfer to the stove to reduce by half. Okay, next up for our main and our starter will be the vegetable prep. Very simple, but every dish deserves a little bit of veg, so we'll try to keep it straightforward for you guys so you don't have to work too hard. First, we're going to start with our carrots. These are heirloom variety. We've got a little bit of yellow carrot. We have a purple carrot garnish, and we also have just a straight orange carrot. So we'll just peel it off, nice and simple. This is just known as a Y peeler. Best peeler around. You can go old school with the box grater, but for me, I like to keep things quick in the kitchen because we're always working against the clock. Next up, we're just going to grate them down. All right, so we got our grated carrot. Next up, we're moving into the green pepper. We use green pepper in this dish because we're looking for the bitterness. Because we have created a simple syrup, the bitterness of the green pepper is a good contrast to the sweetness. What we do for these dishes is try to create that umami flavor of sour, salty, sweet, spicy. I think a balanced dish should always have a little bit of the bitter, sweet, salty, and spicy flavors in it as much as possible. But if you can't create that, that's okay too, but just try to keep that in mind. Balancing your dish will always bring you better flavor. And then we're just going to chop it down kind of julienne style. Julienne, which is just very thin, even cuts. We are going to throw in a little bit of apple cider vinegar. A lot of people use lemons, wine, anything to get a little more acidity in their dish. This just will help balance that sweetness of the syrup. We're using apple cider vinegar today. We don't use very many lemons and limes in our kitchen as they are tough to find Canadian growers that make them and produce them. So we like to use wine and vinegar mostly in our dishes. All right, so now we are moving into the vegetables which we are going to pair with our salmon today. Here we're going with peppers. We have an orange pepper. Again, we'll be breaking it down similar fashion as the green, taking off the tops and the bottoms. And then again, we're coming in and pulling out the fins or the ribs as well. So these guys we're just going to portion out into bite-sized pieces, more like of a triangle, and just kind to show a little bit of style to your cuts, just as it'll make your plates a little bit prettier. These guys will reserve for when we're cooking. Get these tops and bottoms out of the way. Next up is our summer squash, or also known as zucchini. And then what we're doing is breaking it down into half, and then we're gonna cut it down into the same sort of style of the triangles, making it more bite-sized. All right, so there's the summer squash done, and then we'll be moving into the onion. For the onion, we're going to just cut them a lot smaller because this is going to be for our sauce. Onion is a great way to build flavor. It is an aromatic. So we're just going to peel off the kind of harsh outer layer and the skin. And then we're going to move into a cut which is known as brunoise, another French term in the kitchen. This just means a very small dice. There we got the small dice, nice tiny little cuts. And then we're just going to reserve the rest of the onion for later use. So next up is our leek. Leeks are a great flavor. They're much more milder than the onion, kind of a mix between a green onion and a yellow onion. Great to use, kind of one of the forgotten ingredients in the kitchen. And again, we're just going to cut that in half, then cut it again into quarters, and then we're going to break it down into small cuts, just like the onion. All right, so we got the leek cut. We're just gonna grab another bowl and swing it in there. All right, so lastly is our chive. They're just kind of a finishing onion, and they just kind of throw in a little crunch and a whole lot of good flavor. And then pop it in there. Okay, next up, the starch of the dish. This is only just for the main. Our starter is just vegetable and beef based. And then the fish, the salmon dish that we're doing, will have a little bit of potato in it. We're going to be using the fingerling potato. Okay, so now we're going to be throwing our starch into the pot and then just usually cooking these guys until they start to float. It's usually a good indication that your potato is done once they start to float up to the top. But you can always grab your potato, give it a poke with either a fork or a knife. So say you're using your knife, when you go to give the poke, it should slide off your knife or your fork just through gravity. Don't try to shake it off. And then if it slides right off, it will be good to go, nicely cooked through. The idea is you want to kind of cook them to that al dente, and then you want to let them rest and then finish off on their own on the counter. So we're just going to throw some of that fresh herbs. Today we're using thyme, and then some of the bay leaf right in. And then anything, general rule, anything that grows in the ground, you're using cold water to begin. Anything that grows above the ground, you usually use hot water and then throw them into blanch. Of course, there's always exceptions to the rule, but that's a good kind of general way to cook anything when you're boiling it. They usually take about 15 minutes. Okay, so next up is the proteins for our main and our starter. We'll be starting with the beef for the starting dish. This is known as a petite tender. It is part of the chuck, and it is second to the regular tenderloin, which is found in the midsection. This is found on the shoulder section of the chuck, and it's the petite tender, and it'll say my shoulder is the cow shoulder. It hangs over the shoulder blade and is quite tender and really good value for the type of steak it is. So you're gonna have a nice tender steak, but you're not gonna pay through the roof like you would with a tenderloin. These are known as butcher cuts, so they're kind of the off cuts. They're called that because the butcher would take them home, he wouldn't sell them. You're not gonna find this just at a regular grocery store. You'll have to go to a butcher and ask for this kind of cut. When we're cleaning a piece of meat, basically what you're doing is anything that's not red, you're going to be removing. So this is connective tissue, silver skin, and this is a boning knife. It's a nice thin knife, also known as a fillet knife in some cases. So we're just going to be kind of pulling this off. Try not to saw too much. So you're just trying to give easy cuts as you don't want to remove too much meat. This is about 8 ounces, and that's kind of what we're looking for, that sort of half pound. And then it would be great to share for 2. And then we're going to sear this off at a very high heat, get some caramelization, get some great flavor, do a little basting on it, and then slice it down for our ginger beef dish. All right, next up is our main, which we are doing salmon today. We just thought we'd talk a little bit about salmon. Everyone knows this fish. Dense fish, a little bit oily, very, very tasty fish. Probably the most famous fish of all. There's definitely a lot of varieties of salmon. Today we are going to be doing a sockeye salmon. All right, so the salmon that we have today is skin on. We will be scaling this guy and leaving the skin on, but we can also remove the skin as well. A good way to take care of these scales is a fish comb. If you don't have a fish comb, of course, a knife. You can just scrape against the skin and it will remove any of the scales. A good way to stay clean is if you use a garbage bag or if you have a Safeway bag, put your fish in the bag, then you can start scaling it because the scales will fly everywhere, make a big old mess, and that's not ideal for what you want. So we're going to be scaling it down. There's plenty of programs for sustainable fish, like the Ocean Wise program. It will be marked on the packaging of the fish, whether it's Ocean Wise, whether it's sustainable. Always try to kind of look for that, and then you'll know your fish has been sourced from somewhere that has got a good reputation and that is trustworthy, that it will be a sustainable fish. One other thing about the sockeye salmon is if you can't source it, we will always try to use a different kind of salmon. We'll either move to a frozen salmon, we'll move to the Coho, the King, the Atlantic, but either way, we will always be bringing you salmon, and then you can just try the different varieties. Because as moving forward out of the season, we might have to change it up a little bit. Okay, we are going to start cooking, but I can't stress enough that you want to turn on the oven to about 250, 275, just to have it as a warmer, so that when you start working with your multiple pans, you have somewhere to store your potatoes, your veg, any of your finished product, just so that they stay warm while you finish off the beef and you finish off the fish. You don't want to destroy all your hard work by having it all go cold and then you have to reheat. It's much more efficient to just get your oven on and use it kind of like sort of a staging or a warmer, and then once we're ready to plate up, you'll be happy, good to go. Okay, so we have arrived to the moment of all the cooking. We've done our mise en place. Everything's ready to go. Things are chopped, sliced. Things are looking good. Now it's the fun part. For the vegetables, you don't have to have such a hot pan, but for the meat, you do. In our kitchen, we just use canola oil. When you have a nice oil and it takes heat, it very much just loses that flavor. So we just use the canola. You can use a corn, any vegetable oil. And then for other applications like finishing a salad or finishing with an oil, extra virgin's awesome. And then we're going to start heating up our veg. Ooh, this is the syrup. Careful that you don't want it to boil over. That was a close one. Obviously, sugar will kind of come up in your pot and it can boil over. So once you reach a boil, kind of turn that heat down and you'll be good to go. Now that this guy's kind of reduced by half, it should be all married, flavorful, ready to go for your dish. And then we'll apply it to the vegetables once there's a little more sauteed. So we're gonna be throwing in directly our julienne green pepper. Nice to hear a sizzle kind of when you throw in your vegetables. Don't want too much because obviously you don't want to brown your vegetables too much. You want to kind of keep that bright, nice flavor. And then these are the grated carrots that we had earlier. So next up, we'll be pouring a little bit of that ginger syrup in there. We want to get that kind of syrupy sort of consistency so that when you're plating, the syrup's gonna stick to the vegetables, it's gonna stick to the meat, and then you're not gonna sort of lose that flavor. So just let that kind of reduce down, cook our veggies, and it'll be good to go. Now, next for the meat. Here's your butchered piece of meat. We're gonna wanna season it. Half the seasoning that you put on this meat will be lost in the pan, so we wanna go pretty heavy. And then red meat like beef or lamb loves pepper, so you can go pretty heavy on that pepper. Pepper will burn if you sear on a high heat, so it is up to you whether you want to kind of do the pepper first or do the pepper last. For me, I don't mind that kind of seared flavor, so we're always putting the pepper on first. All right, so let's get some heat on our pan. Notice the oil's moving. For me, I'm just gonna be looking for just a touch of smoke kind of coming off that pan, and then you should be good to go. So we go right in the pan. This meat should always be room temperature when you put it in the pan. That'll ensure even cooking. If you take this meat right out of the fridge, throw it in the pan, you're gonna have a very red center and a very charred outside. And then we can kind of take a peek. Starting to get some color. You wanna move it around a bit. So this is only an 8-ounce piece. It won't take too long to cook. Usually you're thinking in the pan about 1 to 2 minutes per ounce. There we go, nice and brown. We're gonna turn down the pan a bit and kind of let it finish off. So here we have our reduced syrup, our veggies, and then we'll just be waiting for this meat kind of finish off, and then we'll put it back in the roasting pan and let it rest. Resting meat is one of the most important things you can do. So it's getting there. When cooking meat, you just want, when looking for a mid-rare, kind of a bit of a spring back, starting to feel pretty rare, and then about another 30 seconds, we'll be good to go. Maybe we'll go one more flip back, just to check that side. And then it's got a nice caramelization. It's gonna impart a lot of flavor, that browning. Also, you can turn it on its side and get that kind of final sort of strip where it hasn't been seared, just to be a little perfect. Oh, it smells great in here. I'm sure it smells good in your kitchen too. Needs to rest about 1 minute per ounce. That is just kind of a general timeline. So this guy should be good for about 8 minutes. Right now it feels quite warm to the touch. That is not ideal. We'll let it cool down. And once it's ready to go, then we'll plate up. We are gonna start with first, of course, the starter. So this is beef for 2. We're done with our final product. It feels pretty good, fairly mid-rare. Don't be worried if you're under, no big deal. This meat eats well at a rare, but if you're a little over, fine. If you're a little under, totally fine. You can also just tell everyone you meant to do that, and it's a happy mistake, just like anything in the kitchen. With mistakes, don't panic, roll with it. If need be, you can always put it back on the heat if you're really worried about a rare, but don't worry, it's gonna be good. All right, so I have a slicer here, it's a big knife. We're gonna go on about a 45-degree angle because it'll plate nicer, and we're just gonna literally cut through once and then bring it back again. And then we're just gonna top with our veggies. And we're gonna top with our crispy leeks that we have given you. So these are just leeks that are fried in cornstarch, just to make it crispy kind of. They have basically an onion ring flavor to them. Very nice, make a dish nice. And then we're gonna take a red radish, and then we're just gonna give a little bit of julienne cut. You can leave the radish whole, that's fine too, and just plate up as a kind of little round disc. We just cut them down. Radish plays very well with beef. And then just as a second garnish, finish her off. Okay, so now that we've done our awesome ginger beef starter, we're going to be moving on to the fish main dish star of the show tonight. So the potatoes are just finishing off. Again, we have the herbs in there, salted water, and a little bit of bay leaf. Good flavor. Skin on, because fingerling potatoes love the skin. And then we're just gonna strain them out. Normally, just strain them out over the sink, but for this guy, we're just going to strain him out into a little spider. That's the kitchen term for this strainer. And I'll discard the water. So potatoes are good to go. And then now we'll be moving into the fish and the cooking of the vegetables. So we need 2 fry pans for the vegetables and 1 for the fish. And then finally, one for our sauce. The sauce we're going to be doing today is a beurre blanc. It just stands for butter and white, which is white wine and butter that is going to go into this sauce. The wine is the acid that will brighten up that fish, make it tasty, and then we're going to add a little onion, garlic, leek, and chive to it. It's not the most traditional beurre blanc, but this is just a quick way and a good introduction to doing a beurre blanc just fast and easy. Just in case, because obviously in the restaurant setting we got lots of equipment. If you don't have 4 pans, you can use a smaller pot to make the sauce. You can use the pot to make the vegetables, whatever it may be. What you can also do too as well is cook the sauce, put it off to the side, rinse your pan out, and then do your vegetables. Ideally you want to do it all at the same time, but if you're in a jam, you can take one out, rinse it, and then start again. Just dropping the veg in. They're going to, again, hot pans. Dropping the veg in. And then the veg stock that we provided you, you're just going to throw that in. It's going to calm down. And then you're just going to take some of the butter we've given you and throw in. All right, so now that we have the stock and the butter in the pan, it's what is butter stock emulsion. So again, putting 2 liquids together that don't normally go together. And then we're going to just season our veg, a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. And then we're just going to reduce that down, and as that reduces down, the veg stock's going to evaporate, and then we're going to be left with mostly butter, and it's going to be nice, tasty, because vegetables love a little bit of butter. So we'll just let that come down. Actually, we'll move it to the back burner, turn it down a bit, and just kind of let it go. The vegetables will cook fairly fast because we have broken them down. It's up to you on the texture. If you cook them for a couple minutes, they'll be al dente. If you cook them for a bit longer, like 4 to 6 minutes, they'll be a little more cooked if that's your preference. And just kind of let them chill out. Next is the potatoes. So we're just going to take our potatoes out, and then we're going to give them a little crunch. These will be crushed, and then it's going to be kind of like a rustic mash. So for me, I'll just use the peel of my hand. These are nicely cooked, so they'll be easy to do. And then it's okay to have a little bit of that herb on there because it's just more flavor. They're all cooked out. Herbs are delicious to eat. And then we'll be throwing them all in. A little bit of that veg stock. Nice hot pan. And again, a little bit of butter. Your preference, you can add a whole cube if you like, or you can just kind of squish one down and just add a little bit. Potatoes do love butter, so I'll give it a little bit more. And again, can't stress season. We're just going to throw them down in the ovens, keep them warm. And then the potatoes, we're just going to reduce that out. Potatoes should be fully cooked, so you won't have to cook them too much longer. And then we're going to be moving into the fish. A fair amount of oil for fish. It'll help you brown. You won't have any kind of white spots where it isn't seared. All right, so we have our sockeye salmon. Going to season up. And then see how the smoke's coming just like the beef. But this guy we're going to take off now and then put the fish on. And then a bit of a trick is you'll see kind of a browning happening on the fish. Don't mess with it too much, but if it's lifting off, you're in a good spot because the skin has not tacked down. And it doesn't hurt to give it a little push. That'll ensure no kind of air pockets, and your fish will be evenly browned on the bottom. Just let it do its thing. Now we're gonna start working on the sauce. I'll move to this burner so you can get a good spot. So we have a bottle of white wine again. Squeeze bottles, they're great. Just gonna put a little bit of white wine in here. Then we have our minced garlic. Gonna throw that in too. You don't have to have garlic in this sauce. You can just go with the wine, onion, and leek. But I love garlic so much that let's throw some garlic in there. And then the leek as well. So then we're just gonna start reducing that wine, a little bit of seasoning. And then once the wine gets kind of reduced out to a French terminology that's called sec, which means dry, we're gonna throw our butter in without the heat, and the butter's gonna melt and just become a nice kind of sort of saucy consistency. All right, let's move back to our fish. Whoops, we have a little bit of a pocket. We're gonna wanna kind of press that down a bit more, but it's getting there. And the fish is still nice and rare. You can cook your fish to rare, mid-rare, medium, but I won't go really past medium. as salmon. It's a lovely fish, will dry out on you. And then once it starts finishing cooking on the roasting rack, it'll kind of come up and then it won't be overcooked. You'll have a kind of a nice pink line through it, and your fish will be tasty and not very dry. You can cook it to well done if that's your preference, but I will recommend a medium cook is always best. And the way we achieve the medium cook is once the skin is cooked, we'll flip the fish over, just kiss the heat on the other side, and then rest it. And then you should come up to a nice medium after that. All right, and we got the wine kind of moving its way down, almost there. Fish is coming up close too. It's nice to try to time the sauce and the fish at the same time, as then it'll be warm, and then you can pull out your vegetable and your starch, plate up, and then your sauce won't go kind of too cold on you, and you can still enjoy it. One more knob of butter. This is called mounting. You just want to have enough sauce for the two of you. Nothing worse than not having enough sauce for both dishes. And then if you feel like you want a bit more sauce, making a touch extra always keeps people happy. So you can see how it's kind of thickening up. But when you're mounting with your butter, you want to melt it all down before you add in the next butter, or it will become oily on you. For me, I'm just going to go one more of the half knob of butter, and then we'll be right where we want to be. Once the sauce is done, the butter's melted, we're just going to throw in the chive for a little more flavor, and then we'll be good to go. There we go, it's looking pretty good. This guy's looking real nice. Just about ready to be enjoyed. Get these chives in there. And again, you can put in as much as you want. I'm a lover of chives, so we'll throw a bunch in there. It's also nice color on the dish as well. All right, and then you see some of the oils getting cooked. That's a good sign. That means she's pretty close to medium. We'll flip over. So see, it's got it nice and crispy all the way through now. Flip over. And again, like I said, just kiss the one side. Very short. There we go. Turn off the heat. Now we're here to the final moment, the plating. This is where creativity and fun comes in. Plate it however you want. Here we have what is kind of like a bowl plate. We call it a blate. It's nice because it holds everything in, but you don't have to dig too deep to get it. Obviously, whatever you have at home is good. Your sauce should be thick enough that it won't run all over a plate, and it'll still be fine. But there is no right or wrong when plating. Maybe you have a little competition with whoever's dining tonight, see who can make the better plate. We do that all the time at work. So here we have the potatoes. It's going to be the base. We're just going to finish off with a little bit of our leek and onion and chive just to brighten things up. Gives a little bit of crunch and texture. Just mix that all in. Still nice and warm because we had everything in our warming oven. And then we're going to plate the one plate for you guys, but obviously you'll be plating two of these. So just about half. Now we have our fish cooked to a nice medium, crispy skin side up. If you do it skin side down, you might lose a lot of that crispiness, which you work so hard on. Can't stress enough, skin side up. Next is our little beurre blanc. It's nice and thick, still got some heat to it. You don't want it too hot, as it is a butter sauce and can split on you. This one we're just going to try to not go right over the fish, just a little bit, because we don't want to kill that crispiness. And then just kind of make your way back, working that sauce. Reserve enough for the next dish. Looks like we'll have enough just in there. And then we're going to garnish. We've given you little micrograins. They'll be cut for you. Here we're just going to cut them off. We're just going to kind of bunch them up, plate on top. You can also go style of just spreading it all around. Just a little bit of color. The microgreens are great flavor. This is called purple songo. Kind of has a little bit of a radish flavor, very nice. And then we also gave you little carrot curls, which will come in a bit of water, just so they don't dry out. Take your carrot curl, you're just gonna crack it, and then it's just a nice garnish, the heirloom variety, nice purple color. Just tuck it in there somewhere, and then it'll finish your dish nicely. I like to finish with a little bit of oil. This is where your extra virgin olive oil will come in. Just gives things a nice shine, a little bit of flavor. Don't go crazy, and you're good to go. And then this is our final product. Okay, so now we're here finally at the final moment. Wasn't too hard, was it? I hope it was simple, easy, and fun. Now you can enjoy your food. We have our sockeye salmon over the crushed fingerlings with a little bit of summer squash peppers and our beurre blanc as a starter sauce for you to learn. And then we also have our beef sliced nicely, a little bit elevated from the regular deep fried ginger beef dish, topped with our green pepper, our heirloom carrot, and our ginger syrup and crispy onions. I can't stress enough that if you follow all these steps, you should end up with something very similar and something just as tasty. We do this in the restaurant all the time. You cannot cut steps. It is ideal to always follow it. Be patient, trust your instincts, and you'll end up in a good spot and you'll enjoy dinner. Hope you enjoy this just as much as I have. We'll see you soon.